Welcome to the Infinity Institute from the Dice Gods. My name is Hydra, and in today's video we are going to have a look at specialists. So they're a pretty cornerstone piece of the game, and we're going to talk about the different types there are, what they do, how important they are, and for our members we're going to have a look at some different types of lists as well of certain key ways of deploying and using specialists. So let's get into it. So first of all, what is a specialist? It is a trooper who has special abilities and or equipment, so something that makes them more than just a killing machine, effectively. They can often do specific combat roles, including healing, fixing, hacking, button pushing, etc. So they are the guys that do, as I say, the other things other than violence. They are often required to complete objectives in many missions, not in all, but you'll find that there are a lot of missions where it's necessary to have a specialist or specialists to achieve a thing, and without it you simply can't score, you can't score as much. That said, there are also missions where your specialists are the target of the enemy and you score points for killing more specialists, so it can be a double-edged sword. It's not an easy life being a specialist in Infinity. They're also needed to complete many of the classified missions from the operations deck. So you will see, especially in ITS, that there are, so the tournament side of things, there are lots of missions which you have to draw one or more cards from to score effectively. And a lot of those, not all, but a lot of those are tied again back to a specific type of specialist. So they're very important. Not every trooper can be a specialist. That means that you'll find that there are certain troop choices inside of every faction which don't have the option to take any specialists. That's just not their thing. So yeah, you need to be considered with which ones you choose and all that kind of thing. So, and some armies excel in one type or another. Hack Islam is epic for doctors who can do amazing things. Nomads are brilliant for hackers. There are certain factions that just have a distinct advantage in one or more different types of specialist. So, what are specialists? Which particular troop types are specialists? Well, it does depend on the mission, but as a general rule, your doctors, your engineers, your hackers, your forward observers, paramedics, and chain of command are the main types of specialist. There are also specialist operatives. They exist as well, but when we're talking about a specific type of specialist, those are your main ones. So, doctors, what do each one of these different types of specialists do? We'll start with the doctor. By passing a whip check when in base-to-base contact with a trooper who's in the unconscious state, you can remove a wound and stand them back up. Now that's important. You have to be in the unconscious state to be doctored. You can't just doctor somebody who's lost one of two wounds. You have to have lost everything and gone unconscious. If that whip check is unsuccessful, then the trooper who's unconscious loses another wound and goes to the dead state, basically. They're out of the game. However, if the person that you're doctoring has a cube, which is marked on their profile, then you can spend a command token and re-roll that failed doctor roll. So you can actually do a re-roll with the doctor. There are some doctors, I think, that have I think it's mostly engineers actually, but some have like re-rolls they can do anyway. But as a general rule, the only way you can do a re-roll is with a command token on a trooper with a cube. Engineers, it's the same thing, but a doctor almost. By passing whip check, they may remove a wound from a trooper with the structure stat, so the STR stat. Note they don't have to be unconscious. So if you have a remote that has tag that has 3 structure and it's lost 2 structure, it's still operational, it's still in the game, you can heal those other 2 structure back up. You can get it back up to full strength. But again, if you fail one of your rolls, then you lose another, or you gain another wound, so you lose a point on that structure. So, as with doctors, you can use a command token to re-roll a failed engineer roll on a trooper with remote presence. So if it all goes horribly wrong and your engineer just isn't, then you can resolve that with a command token. Engineers also can crucially cancel the immobilized A, B, and targeted states by whip checking next to somebody who has those states. So they do have some other uses as well beyond just healing stuff, which is pretty cool. They also often come with decharges, and decharges are used for certain classified missions too. So they are engineers. Between the engineer and the doctor, the engineer is way more useful as a general rule because they can do more stuff. But doesn't mean to say that you don't want to take the doctor, because yeah. Hackers. The joy that is hacking. So A hacker is a trooper with a hacking device. There are 4 types of hacking device: the standard, the Evo, the Plus, and the Killer. Each of those hacking devices have their own programs which have their own impact in different ways. For example, a killer hacker has the ability to kill other hackers. It's in the name. Whereas an Evo hacker uses its programs to buff other units on the board. So, for example, it can give firewall modifiers to heavy infantry, or it can give a remote marksmanship, which means that it ignores the negative modifiers for shooting a target in cover. Pretty useful. Hacking is done by doing a whip check, and you normally save against a hacking attack with BTS instead of arms, so it's a slightly different process to save against hacking. Next you have the Forward Observer. The Forward Observer is kind of probably the most useless of the specialists because they're incredibly situational. They can do a Forward Observe skill which basically lets you do a BS attack with whip, and on success you give the targeted state to an enemy trooper. Why would you do that? Because you want to drop a guided weapon on them, is the normal thing, or it's classified. So, of all of the specialists, the Forward Observer is probably the least useful. Then we have the Paramedic. They carry the medikit, and they can use the medikit in base-to-base with a trooper in the unconscious state to make a fizz roll. If the fizz roll passes, the unconscious trooper stands back up effectively. So, crucially, you don't use the whip of your Paramedic at any real point. Because they have a medikit as well, you can use that at range, so you can actually shoot a medikit at a unconscious trooper that's a distance away, and then you would need to roll to hit, and then you'd need to roll the fizz roll, and then they'd stand up or not. So you have that option, but the medikit is also carried by doctors, so it's not just these guys that have it. And finally we have the chain of command. This takes over the role of lieutenant if the lieutenant is put into a null state. So if your LT gets killed, chain of command trooper steps up, so you're not in loss of lieutenant and avoids the inconvenience of that state. Okay, so let's talk about some basic tactics for your average everyday specialist. First of all, when you're playing a mission, you need to check the mission, because you'll find that certain objectives can be better completed by a type of specialist or another. So, for example, from memory, specialists in supplies, you get a bonus to achieving your role, and effectively you do 2 rolls actually rather than 1 when you open the tech coffin. So that's incredibly beneficial because, you know, rolling 2 dice rather than 1 and getting +3 for doing that is just really helpful at the end of the day. It's going to massively increase your likelihood of getting in there. So having a clear understanding of which type of specialists can do the job best of all is key. You also want to ensure you have a variety of specialists, because you'll often be hunting down classified objectives. Classified objectives are drawn at random, and you can end up with anything from there. You can end up needing an engineer, you can end up needing a hacker, you can end up needing a doctor. Ensure that you have a spread of different types of specialist. The only one you can really kind of ignore for the most part is the Forward Observer if you're taking hackers, because hackers can normally do the Forward Observer's mission in place of the Forward Observer. So that's, as a general rule, the ones you want to take, so a hacker over a Forward Observer. Make sure you bring enough. If your mission requires you to have specialists and you only bring 3, then your opponent can give themselves a really good chance of winning the game just by shooting those 3 guys in the head early in the game. If you're kind of bringing 4, 5 or 6, then it starts becoming a bit more of a problem for your opponent to take them all out. It's simply not worth them hunting them. But if you do bring too few, then you can just completely get taken out of the game just by having your specialist killed. Along the same vein, don't bunch up. It's often the case that you'll have specialists in a fire team. If the fire team all forms a nice big templatable target, your enemy again will aim to do that and take you out of the game by killing your specialists off. So, next of all, take your time. You have 3 turns. When you're doing an objective that requires your specialist to do it, don't feel that you have to charge up and do that objective within the first 5 orders of the game. That can be a recipe for getting your specialist killed. Make sure that when they go into a territory, you have, as far as possible, control over that territory, and they have the greatest chance of survival. So don't just scream in because it's early in the game. In your list making with your specialist, play to your strengths. If you are playing nomads, you have got a wealth of hackers. You can bring hackers really easily. So do. give yourself a lot of different hacking options. That's what they're there for. And conversely, target the enemy specialists. If they've only turned up with 3, make sure that they start turn 2 with 0. There's nothing finer and no easier way of getting yourself some cheap points and winning the game than denying your opponent the ability to achieve objectives. So have a clear visibility of who their specialists are, and then if you get the opportunity, take them out of the box. This next section has some example lists for the patrons and members, so we're going to run through that, guys, and free watchers over on YouTube, I will see you again in a second. So there you are, there is the basic introduction to specialists, what they do, how they work, and some pointers in how to deploy them and what to be aware of when you're running them. We will at some point do more list analysis for members and patrons so you can get a bit of a deep dive further into that. Speaking of, if you are not and you would like to become a member or patron, then you'll find the links in the description below. Let's have a cup of coffee and let's me do more of this. These guys on screen now have been kind enough to support the channel, and yeah, couldn't be doing it without you guys. Thank you so much, especially the mighty Chris Sexton, Mr. Cheshire, and Michael Rowan et al. You guys are doing fantastic work. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to see you on the Discord and on live streams too. But aside from that, if you don't want to join and you don't want to become a member, then do please like, share and subscribe. Get the word of the Dice Gods out there. Hope this has been useful. Questions in the comments below, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Goodbye.